Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the post-game show here on the Colton Report. I'm your host, Clayton Garrett. Joining me are the two usual suspects. First and foremost, Jeremy Turner Montgomery. Jeremy, how you doing? Happy Thanksgiving.
Good. Thanksgiving dinner was a lot. Didn't have to throw it up after a great performance yesterday. So that's good. It's good.
Yeah, it's always a good time whenever this Thanksgiving dinner stays down. Travis, how was your holiday, and how you doing?
Good. And, 2 years ago, the game was back to back. I mean, you had dinner and then you had the game, you had to get ready. This year, we got a little time to digest, but, it was a perfect game to end Thanksgiving. Very easy to watch.
People were able to get their turkey nap in this year before the game, and it was much needed. I mean, hey, it doesn't hurt being able to watch the Bills at night on Thanksgiving evening. And, they had an impressive showing, and they needed one, especially after that lousy showing last week at home against the Colts, beating the Saints 31-6. It was a much different outing and a much different looking Bills team. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on this Bills team coming into this game, and what were your thoughts coming out?
Well, I thought they needed a win for sure. This is a game that they couldn't afford to lose. Less likely that they lost the Colts game, but that Jags game, they had to have a win here, and they got it. And like I said, it doesn't matter to me what people say. I know a lot of people say, well, it was the Saints team, they're beat up. That doesn't matter. This is a very good coach team. This was a Sean Payton coach team at their home dome, and they've been competitive this year. Saints have 5 wins for a reason. They didn't get those wins for nothing. So this again, the Bills needed to win. They needed to come out. They needed to show balance on offense, which I thought they did. They need to show the same ferocity, get back to that ferocity they had been showing on defense, and I thought they did that as well. So I thought overall something they did the things they needed to do.
Yeah, they absolutely took care of business yesterday, and they look much more like the team we've all grown used to watching throughout the 2021 season. Travis, what were your thoughts on the game against the Saints yesterday overall, and how did you feel about the Bills coming out?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. They took care of business. That's kind of what came to mind. The offense bounced back, especially that second half. I thought they finished the game very well. The defense springboarded back to what we were used to seeing. I think you could see the intent when we were defending the run game. You can tell that even on a short week, that's something they focused on. Obviously, it's no Jonathan Taylor, but still, like Jeremy said, if the NFL has shown us anything this year, it's that you can't take any team lightly. Buffalo and the rest of the top teams in the AFC have succumbed to lesser talent. So this was a game where we could have easily let slip if our minds and hearts were not, or the Bills' minds and hearts were not in it. But like I said, they took care of business, and they looked solid.
Yeah, the Saints being without their top 2 running backs, you can say that about Mark Ingram. He's the second string, but he was out of the game yesterday, and as was Alvin Kamara. The Bills came to handle business against the run. It looked like that was the focal point of their defensive game plan, to really kind of bottle up that line of scrimmage, and I thought they did an incredible job. And after the showing that they had against the Colts, that defensive line needed to play better in order to come out of this game victorious, and that was the case. And also the same can be said about the offensive line. And the offensive line, they weren't perfect, but they certainly did a better job against the Saints than they did against the Colts. The Bills offense, they went out there and scored right on the first drive. They had a couple of miscues, a couple of mistakes in the first half, a pair of interceptions from Josh Allen in this game. It wasn't a bad showing for this Bills offense. There was certainly some more meat on the bone. And that's the phrase that Sean McDermott and his coaching staff uses a lot. But this offense still looked efficient. They looked effective. They looked like they weren't afraid to run the ball, and it looked like they weren't abandoning the running game like they have in weeks past. Jeremy, how did you feel about the Bills' rushing attack, and are some of your concerns alleviated by this offensive line, as well as the running crew of now what looks to be Devin Singletary and Matt Breida?
No, my concerns aren't alleviated. It was nice to see a commitment to the run, the commitment to staying balanced, because I think you saw a more efficient Josh Allen. I think if you go through the numbers, you'll probably see the stats of Josh Allen being more efficient along as they continue to keep running the ball. They didn't average a lot of yards. I think Singletary averaged 2.9, and so did Breida. But it was the fact that she kept coming at him, and the defense couldn't just set up shop waiting for the pass. But no, by no means, I still have concerns because we've seen this before. This is the first time or the second time that we've seen Sean McDermott come out and say, "Hey, we need to run the ball more. We need to be more balanced." Then we run the ball the next game, make a commitment, and then we go right back to throwing the ball 47 times again. So no, I'm not alleviated. I still have concerns there. I need to see this throughout. I need to see this over the next 2 to 3 games for me to say, okay, it's okay. I get it. I'm okay with what they're doing. So no, it was nice to see though. I think you saw a different Bills offense. I thought you saw a more efficient offensive line because of it. And we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, I tend to agree that I'd really like to see this become more of the regular. I want to see this running game have consistent games, back-to-back games of them not abandoning the running game and them trusting their running backs, trusting this offensive line, and allowing them to get in the flow. I feel like this offensive line is much better when you allow them to lean into people and drive people off the line of scrimmage early and often in games versus just setting them back in their pass sets to form a pocket around Josh Allen. Travis, how did you feel about the Bills' rushing attack in this game? Like Jeremy mentioned, both the top runners had top running backs had 2.9 yards per carry, a couple pressures and a couple sacks given up in this game. How did you feel about the rushing attack and the Bills' offensive line in this one?
Well, I guess starting with the rushing attack, I thought what I did like is the way we're utilizing the run game. We're seeing a little bit more zone reads, outside zones. We saw a couple of those crackback tosses, a little bit more misdirections, counters. So I like that they're exploring other options. They're kind of manufacturing numbers when it comes to blocking, because I think they know that this straight up, our guys generally are not going to win those battles. So I think a lot is going behind the scenes, a lot of window dressing, and I like that. And it's clear when you see the same play run between Breida and Singletary, specifically one of those counter tosses, Breida finds that opening in the zone, and although he may not move the pile the way Singletary does, I like the way that he's getting 3 or 4 yards a pop, minus a couple of those plays where I'm not quite sure the right side of the offensive line knew what they were doing. A couple, there was a screen pass that kind of Breida went to the right side, but all the offensive linemen went to the left. That was the one where Dawson Knox touchdown got called back. So there's still a little miscommunication, and I wasn't quite sure what happened at right guard where Ford came out, Bates came in, he got injured. We saw Jamil Douglas for a handful of plays, but then Ford was right back in. So I think we know who we are, and we're not that power run team. We just have to find ways to manufacture yards and keep the defense honest, and honestly use that in the play action game, which Allen, like Jeremy said, his numbers don't lie. When you're completing 80% of the passes, I think that has a lot to do with the formations they're running out of.
Yeah, I think having a far more of an emphasis on this running game really just is going to help the offense out through and through. It's going to help with your efficiency. It's going to help with your effectiveness. It's going to help Allen and this heavy passing offense stay balanced and keep that defense on their heels. And I think anytime they don't abandon the running game, then it will bode well for this Bills offense as, the defense starts to move up and creep up, and you can utilize play action more effectively because, the defense is going to account for the rushing attack. The one thing I want to talk about while we're talking about the Bills running back room is Zach Moss being inactivated for this game and what that really means for the Bills the Bills running back room by committee, if you will. Because last week they had all 3 backs active and they had a hard time getting all 3 of them acclimated into the game. I mean, it wasn't that long before the Colts were up on them and up big. They couldn't really run the ball all that consistently, so they didn't really have a chance to get all 3 of them acclimated into the game. But it is difficult for this offense to get 3 running backs involved in the rushing attack. As we've seen in weeks past, they struggle with 2 running backs. So it's not a surprise to see one fall out of favor and one get deactivated. But that being Zach Moss, it's quite curious. I want to see what you guys think about it. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on the Bills' direction with their Bills running back room?
I mean, it's no surprise to me. It's no surprise that when these guys are inactive, we've seen over the last couple of years that the Bills don't like carrying more than two running backs, with the third being a special teamer and Tywan Jones on this roster. It's also not surprising that the guy left inactive is Zach Moss. I mean, in reality, he's averaging 3.5 yards to carry. compared to Devin Singletary's 4.7 yards to carry, and then obviously the emergence of Matt Breida. They're all three different backs, and if we're going to be going to this outside zone scheme, and I was talking to James Mallory about this earlier, if they're going to be going to the outside zone scheme, then Singletary and Breida are more built for that, more than Zach Moss is. Zach Moss is more in between the tackles. Now, I do believe that there's a spot on this roster, game day roster for all three, and I've been saying that because I noticed when we got to the goal line around the red zone yesterday, that's where Zach Moss really succeeds at. And it seemed like when Breida and Singletary hit that hole around the 5-yard line, didn't say we were not moving the pile. So it's not surprising to me. You knew once he said, did Breida earn more touches? Sean McDermott said yes. You knew there was going to be an odd man out. You just didn't know which one was going to be. But when it comes down to it, it was Zach Moss, and that's unfortunate,
Yeah, I think you definitely lose a certain element of power once you pull Zach Moss out of the Bills lineup and out of the Bills running back room. Travis, what are your thoughts on the Bills' direction with how they're handling their running backs?
Well, you're gonna need to account for Taiwan Jones, so it just seems like there's one too many guys, and especially when Spencer Brown comes back, that's another roster spot allocated that we're not going to be able to expend to have a fourth running back, so to speak, on the game day roster. I thought Zach Moss's game against Indianapolis, he seemed a little bit uninspired. There was a pass. It was very insignificant, but it bounced off his hand and he just kind of walked back to the huddle. He didn't really get much going, but like you guys said, he does have that presence down in the red zone, and not just running the ball. There was a handful of times where Allen's able to find him in the passing game. So it would be nice to have him, but I think Breida gives you a different dimension, and I think he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. He feels like he should be playing, and the last 2 games he's accounted for 3 touchdowns. So when McDermott talks about going with the hot hand, I expect there to be shuffling based on that, and I'm sure practice exposes a lot of stuff, whether it's positive or negative on these guys. And when you don't have that bell cow, you're going to have to try to figure out what works, and hopefully with the return of Spencer Brown and Manga, maybe we'll be able to improve this run game. But like I said, I'm not quite sure if we're going to see much more than we already have. And like you gentlemen already touched on, it's really being able to have that other dimension so other teams can't just, run their own defense to stop Josh Allen.
Is there a bit of optimism for either of you with the return of Spencer Brown and John Feliciano?
Yeah.
For how this offensive line functions and the overall, just the entire offense, for the rushing attack, passing attack, all of it, because it all does start at the line of scrimmage. And I think as soon as those two get inserted back into the lineup and they can get that line on the right side the way they want it with Darrell Williams and Spencer Brown, and then you also have a player who you're quite familiar with John Feliciano, who his strengths and his weaknesses. I think I'm quite excited for those two to come back into the lineup, and I think a lot would start to open up for the Bills' rushing attack and what they can and can't do when those two are inserted back in the lineup. And I think that this offense could potentially take a completely different look as the protection, the complexity of the protection that the Bills are going to have is going to be a little different once you plug Spencer Brown back in the lineup, specifically having Darrell Williams slide inside and Spencer Brown on the island at right tackle. That really does change things for this offensive line. And I think that's really where the optimism starts for me with the Bills offense and improving in further weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't play bad against Indianapolis. I was really worried about how they would hold up. And, I don't think that was a major playing in the Bills' offensive woes. And last night there was pressure, and you can tell it kind of messes with Allen's internal clock. But, that being said, they held up. They gave it adequate time, and the run blocking was decent. I mean, they weren't getting blown back as much as we saw earlier in the season. But to answer your question, I mean, Spencer Brown is our most. He's got the highest ceiling, clearly, of all of our offensive linemen, and he might not be polished, but the progress we've seen him and his production, and just his size and his attitude. I'm very excited, and to be able to hold up the way we did last night, knowing that we have at least one other guy who's going to improve, and then moving Darrell Williams into that guard spot. I mean, that's two upgrades on that right side of the line alone, because I do believe, especially in the run game, having Darrell Williams at that guard position is key.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought it up, Travis, because this is something I really wanted to ask Jeremy. And Travis kind of alluded to it by saying the lack of protection, or the lack of faith, if you will, in the line in front of Allen really does mess with his internal clock. And if people want to be box score statisticians or whatever, you want to look at the box score. Allen has thrown 10 interceptions this year in less games than he did last year. That's how many he threw all of last year. And, people have been posing that question of regression throughout, Bills Mafia on Facebook, Twitter, what have you, talking about it, discussing whether he has regressed or hasn't regressed. Jeremy, do you think Allen has regressed? Do you think most of his struggles this season can be credited to the lack of protection that he's seen in front of him this year?
No, I don't think he's regressing. I've talked about using this word regressed multiple times. It's a very nasty and ugly word to use, because people are using it now when players are playing at an elite level, and they're still playing close to an elite level, but maybe not as elite as they were the season before. And then it's, oh, this person regressed. Well, how many times did Tom Brady regress in his career then? Because, I mean, he's 45, and he's 45 pretty much is still going for a Super Bowl ring or contending. So I don't like that word at all. Has he played as well as he played last year? No, he hasn't. But I think a lot of that falls on, yes, this offensive line and the shuffling and our interior blocking, and the fact that Deion Dawkins has not been as solid as he was. Our interior pass blocking has just been awful. Anytime we play somebody who's anyone in the interior, they're in Allen's face in 2 seconds. And anybody who has ever played the quarterback position and knows anything about the quarterback position should know that you can't do anything with pressure coming up the interior. There's no way to get around it. There's no even shuffling away out the pocket. And as far as interception goes, I mean, what do you expect when your offensive coordinator is coming out here and having you sling the ball 47 times a game, no matter what the weather, rain, shine, 24 mile per hour winds? Yeah, you're going to throw interceptions, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to live and die by the pass, and that's what's going to happen. So, no, I don't think he's regressed. I just think that we need to be more balanced with the offense as we were yesterday. And to cut this off short a little bit, he threw 2 interceptions yesterday. One was atrocious. I thought that he stared Diggs down and he tried to force feed him. And the second one, his arm got hit. And I'm seeing people, there's another one. I can't believe his arm got hit. If someone was blocked, his arm wouldn't have got hit. So, end of the day, I think with us finding more balance moving forward, he'll throw less interceptions, because the defense is just not going to say, hey, they're passing the ball. First down pass, second down pass, third down pass.
Yeah, I think people are jumping the gun a bit too quickly with saying that Josh Allen's regressed. Obviously he's had struggles this season that he didn't really have to deal with last year. And that I feel like is really credited to the offensive line. I don't think that you mentioned Deion Dawkins not playing nearly to the same level as he was last season. I think the same could certainly be said about Darrell Williams, because they wouldn't be moving him to inside of right guard. I mean, obviously they have an issue along the interior and they need a guy to play inside, and Spencer Brown's ready to play, so they're going to put him out there. But the Bills' offensive line is lessened when Spencer Brown is out of the lineup, and you put Darrell Williams out there at right tackle. And that's a player that you would re-sign last season. Another player who they had re-signed, John Feliciano, like I had mentioned, he is a player that you know what you're going to get from, but he's still a marginal offensive lineman in the NFL. He's still an average talent, in my opinion. I think the Bills can certainly do much better along the interior than John Feliciano. I think a lot of the struggles that Allen has seen this year can certainly be accredited to the offensive line not having much protection at all. Because if Allen had, you could say that about most quarterbacks. If they have time, they can be a good quarterback. But when Allen had time last year, he was the most dangerous quarterback in the NFL. Period. That was a matter of fact. And, this offensive line, I feel like a lot of the problems that they have had have really resulted in Josh Allen having the struggles that we've seen periodically throughout this season, with the turnovers, with the interceptions, or the fumbles. So really, Travis, how do you feel about Josh Allen and potential? Do you think he's progressed this year? Or are you right along the same lines as Jeremy and I on this?
Well, the definition of regression is a return to former or less developed state. I think it's pretty obvious that Josh Allen is a better he understands football better than he did last year. I think physically he's better. I think he's just improved every year. But those small improvements aren't going to necessarily, come into fruition as in a better stat line. So when you see him throwing more interceptions or you see him throwing for less yards, it's way too easy to just cherry pick stats and throw the regression label, because that's the buzzword. So in short, no, he hasn't regressed. I think it's pretty obvious. I think Allen is in more control of the offense now than he has ever been. It's just been what's going on around him is the reason why you see that slight dip in production. I think him as a football player, not just, mechanics, but him as a leader, him as a quarterback. I don't think that contract had put any negative connotations around him. And I don't think that, that he's regressed in that sense. I think he's pressed, which has led to, interceptions, turnovers, bad plays, but that's what a quarterback of his ilk is going to do when nothing is working around him. I mean, I cannot blame him for trying to, play quote unquote hero ball against the Jags, because that was the only way they were scoring. It was pretty clear, if you ask me. And then the Indianapolis game, I mean, that was like, you had a shot to crawl back in, but McKenzie drops that that kick return, and the game's pretty much over from there. So no, I don't think he's regressed. I think it's a buzzword.
I really think it's a buzzword too. And to be quite honest with you, I don't understand some of the bitterness of Bills Mafia when they say he ain't worth $258 million. And it's just it's funny, man. It really is. Like, he hasn't done anything worth $258 million. Yeah, he has. You want to be hyperbolic? Yeah, he has. Because if it weren't for Josh Allen right now, I'm pretty sure the Bills would still be in the abyss of the NFL. That could be safe to say. He is the franchise quarterback of the team, and he is allowed to have a bad game, period. That happens. Every player in the National Football League has a bad game, whether you're elite or you're marginal or you're average or what have you. Players are allowed to have bad games. And, last night he had 2 turnovers, and that could have cost them the game, but it didn't. That's a matter of fact. And I think Josh Allen, he struggled a lot this year because of the protection in front of him. And I think the problems that people are watching Josh Allen go through this year are most certainly fixable. And in the past, when we have seen fixable problems for even quote unquote unfixable problems for Josh Allen, we've seen them be eradicated and fixed throughout time and through coaching and through development. So my concerns are non-existent for Josh Allen. I don't have any concern for Josh Allen. However, the one thing that I was really happy to see yesterday, and this goes in line with the play calling, which we will, I want everybody in the comments to give their Brian Daboll grading poll for this week, A through F. How you felt Brian Daboll called this game. Give us your grades as to how he did in this game as the Bills offensive coordinator, because the one thing I was really happy to see them do, other than focus on the running game more than they did in past weeks, is get Stefon Diggs involved early and often. Because whenever the Bills get Stefon Diggs involved throughout the entire course of a game, 4 quarters, this Bills offense, I feel like, has a really good game and a really good chance to win. And Stefon Diggs, he had that look in his eye yesterday. I was really happy to see him get involved. And, he had a pretty good game for the Bills. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on the Bills or on Stefon Diggs and the connection that he and Allen had yesterday?
I mean, it's the same connection we saw last year. And I think that they're making it a point to getting Steph involved in the game early. When you get him involved in the game early, it puts pressure on the defense. It's going to open up things for everybody else. If you want to run the ball, it's going to open up a little bit. If you want to get the ball to Beasley, it's going to open up. If you want to get the ball to Sanders, it's going to open up. So getting the ball to Diggs often early is very important. Now, obviously, on the interception, you don't want to see you force feed it, But in the day, I love the connection between. I think they're a top 3, maybe definitely top 4 quarterback receiver tandem in the NFL. And like I said, maybe top 2. I'm not going to put them above Rodgers and Adams yet, but some of the other ones that we look at, we can put them into question. So as far as Brian Daboll goes, for my grade, I gotta give him a grade while we're on the topic. I'm gonna give him a B minus. I'm gonna give him a B minus. And I like that he found balance, but I still don't trust him. So I'm just gonna be that hard grading teacher right now. That's all.
Yeah, I get that. You were skeptical of Daboll for a handful of seasons, and I think he's pulled you back a little bit. 5 years. We're going on still.
Counting.
So, Travis, what would you give a grade for Brian Dable and his play calling yesterday? And what were your thoughts of the overall efficiency of the Bills' passing offense that looked much improved from the week before?
Well, I give him a B. It was solid. I mean, we scored 31 points. We left points. We manufactured a drive where we should have scored. So, anytime you score 31 and leave points on the table, that should be a W, especially with the caliber of defense that we have. There are, I think that he's scheming up a couple plays a little bit better than he was earlier on when we were just kind of lining up and going. There was a play where I believe it looked like it was going to be a wide receiver screen, and somebody came underneath and the entire defense cracked down on it, and it left Beasley open right over the top. So you can tell he's manufacturing some of these plays. A lot of the plays the Knox, are designed to get him the ball. So, let's see. I really love the personnel and the formations. I like seeing Allen under center more. I like seeing the fullback usage. Getting Ryan Bates there as the extra blocker, stuff like that, where we go unbalanced because it kind of puts the defense on their heels. Where if we just keep lining four wide receiver sets, you're going to throw the ball, so teams can take the top away and really just force us to go underneath, where if we have the play action, they have a myriad of options to go after. So I like the direction. I like the course correction that we've seen. But Jeremy said, he has a track record of leaving some clunkers out there. So, we'll see going forward. But as far as the game plan on a short week, it was more than enough to get the W.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for me was the short week and coming off of, I don't like using the word devastating, and I wouldn't classify the Bills' loss against the Colts as devastating. That was a good old fashioned, just ass whooping on a football field between the gridiron. And on a short week, I think it takes not a specific type team, but not every team can come out after a short week and be on Thanksgiving and be the 8:00 game and come out there and look prepared, look ready, look like they're ready to play football, and looks like they're in the zone. I was really happy and enamored with the amount of resiliency by this Bills team that we saw. And it doesn't really come as a surprise to me with with Sean McDermott as their head coach. With the staff that they have in place, with the culture they have in place, with the leaders they have in that locker room. That's just something you expect out of the Buffalo Bills. But I don't think it can go without mentioning just the amount of difficulty that goes in that. You only have 4 days to prepare for a professional football team on a short week after you just took a really bad loss on your field and you're away and you're in the Superdome. That was a difficult set of circumstances, and the Bills overcame that this week. And that's something that's leaves me quite optimistic for the future. As we move into the talking about the Bills defense, we can't get out of it. We have to talk about the loss that they took on that side of the ball with Tre'Davious White going down with a torn ACL. All jokes aside, I don't really want to talk about people who have dissed on Trey this year, but in all seriousness, Trey has had really one of the best seasons he's had in his career. I understand he doesn't have the interception numbers that he had a couple of seasons ago when he first made All-Pro or any of those sort of things, but he has been consistently the best player on the Bills defense week in and week out throughout the entire course of the season. And this is a devastating loss for this Bills team. Trey White is a lot of what this Bills defense does and a lot of what the Bills secondary does. Jeremy, what are your thoughts overall on the loss of Tre'Davious White for this Bills defense?
Well, I mean, obviously this is huge. I mean, it's huge. As Adam Schefter reported it about a couple hours back, that is confirmed, and we're gonna miss him. I can't remember too many times where his defense has looked great when Trey White was not in the lineup. Even if you go back to the Tennessee game last year, or even a few games where Trey White's back was kind of bothering him last year, before it seemed like he got together. It's going to be tough. But this is a good coach football team. You have the best safety tandem in the NFL still. I think you have now, you can arguably say one of the best linebacking tandems in the NFL right now. And we have a whole lot of money and high picks tied up in that pass rush. So if there's any time for this pass rush to show up, it's probably now. But I'm not going to lose any confidence in this defense. I know Trey's a big part of it, but Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier's, If anybody are pro coaches, it's those two guys. They'll figure it out. We'll have to scheme up things a little bit differently. The only benefit is that the Bills are not a man coverage team. It's more of a zone-based team. So, I mean, I will look for us to go out there and maybe sign a veteran, maybe a Quentin Dunbar, someone like that out there that's available to come in and compete. We did get Nick McLeod, who looked very good back in the preseason, back from the Bengals off their practice squad. So it's devastating, though. It is. I mean, Trey White is a top, I would say, guaranteed top 3 cornerback, top 4 cornerback in the NFL right now currently, and you can't replace those guys. You can't replace the one person. You have to replace those type of players with the scheme, and I expect Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier to do that. So, I mean, Levi Wallace has looked good this year. Teron Johnson looked good. Now we need to step up the other side. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, the back end of the Bills cornerback room really needs to come around and step up. And that being Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott's wheelhouse, that leaves me a little more optimistic than it would in any other scenario. But it's never a good thing when the Bills when any team loses their top cornerback, let alone, like Jeremy said, one of the 4 or 3 best cornerbacks in the NFL. Travis, what are your thoughts overall on the loss of Tre'Davious White and what it means really for this Bills defense?
Well, we have to put in perspective. Over the Sean McDermott era, we've been blessed with avoiding a lot of these season-ending injuries, especially in our top players. So it was bound to happen, and we've seen Trey on the floor a lot, and we all hold our breath, and he always gets back up and he comes back into the game. So when you saw the look on his face, he knew, and then you see the replay where it's really not, non-contact, and you see the knee buckle. You're hoping for a sprain, but it's unfortunate. Like Jeremy mentioned, he is, luckily, as a cornerback, you are supported by a lot of other positions around you. So we can make up for it in the pass rush. We can make up for it with the play of our secondary. The thing about it that is probably the most disruptive is that having a guy like Trey White allows a somewhat of a vanilla style defense. When you play a lot of zone, it is very vanilla, and you don't, there's not much to change in regard as coverages. Not having Trey White forces them to go back on that, because when you have Trey White on one side of the field, you can leave him one-on-one. You can leave him without a safety over the top. You can roll that cover 3 coverage over to Levi's side, or whoever else is over there. I think we're going to see a lot less aggressiveness. I don't think we'll see as much blitzing, because we are going, and you saw it, Dane Jackson got beat like once or twice, and it's going to be a learning curve for him to kind of step in there. But yeah, I think you're going to see, I don't think it's going to necessarily make or break this defense, but what it will do is we're probably going to be a little bit more conservative with a play calling, and that may extend drives. And it was sad, because Trey made a hell of a play early on in the game where he jarred that ball away on that crossing route. He's playing in front of the city he grew up in, and it's a shame. But like you guys mentioned, if there's a coaching staff who can overcome and get this worked out, you're looking at them.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see what the plan is for this Bills defense and what they're going to do to really kind of alleviate the loss of Tre'Davious White, if you can. And one thing that both of you guys alluded to was an up the ante from this Bills pass rush. And, one player on that Bills defensive line that stood out to me last night, and I think he stood out to both of you as well, was Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver was all over the field. He continues to be all over the field. Ed Oliver, he's really, throughout the course of this season, he has started to mature himself into the best interior defensive lineman on this team. And certainly one of the a player that every offensive line or offense has to account for when you're matching up with this Bills defense. Jeremy, what are your thoughts on Ed Oliver?
I mean, he's getting it. You can tell he's getting it in front of our eyes. And like I said, we've talked about this plenty of times. I don't think he was in slower development. I think that the fact that people thought that the comparison Aaron Donald, and we were getting Aaron Donald immediately, is what kind of raised the bar for him a lot higher than would it be for other rookies. But he's getting it. He's very strong in the run game. And I think I said this on the show a couple weeks ago, where him having to play one tech a lot more than he ever should last season was going to benefit him against the run, getting those one-on-one matchups. He's winning his one-on-one matchups now, and you could see why the Bills drafted him. his explosiveness in the inside, his explosive chasing down runs, getting to the quarterback. And now, mind you, he's still not put up the sack numbers yet, but I think those will come. But he's a disruptor right now, and that's what they're looking for. You're looking for a disruptor. Now we just have to figure out, while he's disrupting in the inside, can we get the defense ends to get disengaged and push those quarterbacks into him? Or while he's disrupting, when the quarterback's rolling out, can we get these edge rushers to come off the edge and get the sacks that we're looking for? But no, Ed is great, and I think Bills Mafia need to give him a little more credit than what they're giving.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. A lot of people are really hard on Ed Oliver and his lack of production, and being a 9th overall pick, and not really having the time to shine, or not necessarily the time to shine, but not having the stats to back up his draft spot. That's really what people have always been hampering on Ed Oliver for. And it's not necessarily about stats. Last year, he was placed in a position where, like you said, Jeremy, he was playing a lot of one technique, playing a lot, alleviating the loss of Star Lotulelei. But now that he's playing comfortable, now he's more often than not playing that 3 technique. He looks quick. His hands are violent. He looks strong. He looks powerful, explosive, all of the above, and everything that we had expected when we got Ed Oliver here in Buffalo. Travis, what were your thoughts on Ed Oliver? What are your thoughts on his progression throughout this season, and how good he looked last night against the Saints?
Well, Ed Oliver, the thing about fans is, like you said, they're checking the stats. They're watching the football when they play, so they're not seeing what he's doing when he's maybe away from the direction of the play or what have you, or if a guy's coming around the edge, what he does by penetrating up the middle, what effect that can have on a game. And people would call him a bust when he up until this year, I don't think he's put it all together, but he's certainly far from a bust, because you can see his talent for a smaller guy, the way he uses his hands, the explosion, the way he transfers speed into power. He's got it all there. And last night and most of the season, it's been on display. The way this guy penetrates, the way he uses his hands to abuse the blockers and get 4 or 5 yards into the backfield and disrupt plays. He's found weird ways to not get on the stat sheet, whether it's fumble recoveries or sacks, or he found weird ways. But I mean, if you're watching, you don't even have to be the most disciplined football watcher. You can tell he's making a difference. I think there was 3 plays in a row, from the play after Trey got hurt to the following 2 plays in the beginning of the next series. He made every single one in the backfield. So he was phenomenal, and we'll talk about him later, but he's another guy who's added to the list of 5th-year options that we are going to have to pick up and pay, because we drafted him to disrupt the play in the backfield, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I think Ed Oliver is set to stay here for a long time. He's a player that, he came along a little slower to most, but if you just watch the stat sheet, but Ed Oliver has always been wreaking havoc, whether he's facing double teams, and he's not necessarily the biggest defensive lineman. Let's not forget that. We're talking about a guy who might even barely be 285 pounds. That's not his game, to be a guy who's taking on double teams, triple teams, or what have you at the stage of the National Football League. It's not what he's built to do. And I think a lot of people are getting more of a taste as to what Ed Oliver's all about. And hopefully it's a sign of what's to come from him, as he only has a bright future here in Buffalo.
That boy's country strong.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, he's powerful. I mean, hey, I can't imagine what it's like, but messing around with those horses all the time. He's got it. Yeah, he's got to be. So, another nice showing from this Bills defense. A really good showing from the Bills defense. Granted, they were playing Trevor Siemian, but they handled business on that side of the ball, and this Bills defense looked the way they had looked in the weeks before they had played against the Colts. Even against the Jaguars, when they took that ugly loss to them, the defense only allowed 9 points. Allowing 38 last week was really uncharacteristic for them. Really just an ugly showing last week. And to come back on Thursday and to play the Saints and to be really stout in all phases, not really allowing much on the ground, not allowing hardly anything in the air, at least not until Trey was out of the game. They didn't really allow much. This defense it really is one of the best in the league. And I'm excited to see what the plan is going forward to try and alleviate the loss of their star cornerback. Hopefully, like Jeremy was mentioning, that the Bills can start to get more of a complementary pass rush to start to bring along the guys on the edge, right where those guys on the interior are, because I feel like the Bills haven't struggled along the interior with their pass rush throughout the season. They've gotten good push up and quarterbacks haven't really had much of a pocket step up into this year. And I think this Bills defense, they did an incredible job last night. Jeremy, what were your thoughts on how the Bills defense performed through and through?
I thought they performed well. Like I said, I think this is a top 2, top 3 unit in the league. They did what they're supposed to do. I mean, the offense has kind of been a little shaky, so they knew they needed to step up. They had a horrible performance against the Colts, and they responded well. Listen, I don't care if it's Trevor Siemian. I don't care if Alvin Kamara. I don't care if Mark Ingram's out. Those guys they got on that team across the field as professionals. They practice professionals, they're paid as professionals, and they come to work as professionals. The Patriots beat up on this division for 20 years, and no one said boo. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. You stacked it, you get to go in there, you get the team you play against, and you dominate. Now, as you showed that clip, Mario Addis is a guy that I was really impressed with yesterday. I thought he looked very, very quick for his age last night. Because I mean, obviously I don't know. I think he may be the eldest in the room. Maybe Jerry Hughes is, but Mario Addison, as I said, he's a professional pass rusher. No matter what, each year you kind of count on the guy to have 5 sacks. And this year he's headed towards it. Certainly headed towards that number again. But I thought Mario played very well. I thought, like I said, we talked to Ed Oliver. He played very well. Harrison Phillips did pretty good in interior. But the one guy I noticed too, Eli Anku, played a good amount of snaps for us last night, and he was very solid. So obviously we can talk about the importance of Tremaine Edmonds, another great game. And I was actually happy to see NBC spotlight him last night in his play and how good he's becoming. Because a lot of people take Tremaine Edmonds for granted, and I don't know why people continually think that he's not good, or I don't know what people are thinking when it comes to him. But this guy, he's going to have some very great years here in Buffalo. He's probably has a couple All-Pro years. I don't know if he'll be a consistent All-Pro, but he'll have a couple of years there. And the secondary did well again. So I thought the defense did good. If I had to give a grade to Leslie Frazier, I give him an A. And on the season so far, for Mr. Frazier, he gets an A.
Yeah, that Bills defense consistently looks good week in and week out. My Leslie Frazier grade for this week would also be an A. For everybody watching the show, please leave your grade for the Bills defensive coordinator and how you felt that he did coordinating the defense last night against the Saints, and what you thought, how you thought the Bills defense did, A through F, for what you give to Leslie Frazier this week. Trevor, what were your thoughts? Or excuse me, I'm sorry, Travis, what were your thoughts on how the
Bills? What do you call him? Trevor?
It was Trevor Siemian.
It's all right.
It's not the first time. It's not going to be the last. It's all right. You can get me back for that. That's fine. But what were your thoughts on how the Bills defense performed last night? What grade would you give Leslie Frazier and his bunch?
Well, it's obviously an A. I mean, when they're good, they're great. You know, they're number one for a reason. And even the best defenses outside of, some of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defenses have weaknesses. And the Bills, the kryptonite for the Bills defense is having that big prominent rushing attack. And if they're not coming with like last week, they were out schemed. But outside of those 2 games between the Titans and the Colts, they've been elite. Poyer showed up with another pick to just remind everybody that he should be an All-Pro safety this year.
Going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. He just got to keep. He's relevant, and you just can't get him out of there. So it's great to see that. You touched on Tremaine. Fantastic. I mean, the physicality that he's bringing this year is what really, to me, shows that everything is coming together. He knows where he needs to be, and he's not reacting. He's not thinking. He is reacting. So there is a noticeable difference when he comes to fill a hole versus a lot of the other guys. Milano's great. He had a couple of those. He blew up a huge screen pass. Blew up Montgomery, and the D-line was solid, pressure all night. Secondary business as usual, and it's been, like I said, outside those 2 games, there's nothing to complain about, and it's just going to be an interesting challenge to see how they life after Tre'Davious White for this season, how they develop a plan for that. But like I said, there's not much more you can say.
Yeah, if it's one thing that this football team does very well is they adapt very well. They're very resilient. They're very adaptive. They're a good football team. That's what good football teams do. Hopefully, we can see this Bills defense adapt and overcome the loss of Trey White. Obviously, that's not what anybody wants to have. They don't want to have to be in that position. I don't want to have to say that, but that's going to be what the Bills are going to have to do if they're going to move forward and hopefully still have. I mean, not hopefully, but this is still a Super Bowl team. This is still a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Regardless of the loss of Trey White, this is a team that still has business to handle every single week, week in and week out. And, hopefully that's more of the same. But, you both you guys really kind of shined on Tremaine Edmunds and what he brought to this Bills defense this week. And I think we saw that right from the first snap. They ran right up the C gap. Tremaine Edmunds was in the backfield immediately to make the play. And that is something that the Bills desperately missed last week against the Colts, having their middle linebacker to fill the gaps. And I think Tremaine Edmunds hasn't gotten enough credit this year as to how much he's really come along. I feel like he's gotten better every single week we've seen him go out there. He doesn't look nearly as timid, nearly as hesitant as he has in years past. And I tend to agree with Jeremy that he's going to be a future All-Pro for this Bills defense for years to come. And I don't want to get out of here without talking about the special teams, because the Bills special teams unit, the kickoff coverage, the punt coverage teams, they did an excellent job last night. And I definitely want to get both of your thoughts on how the Bills' new return man, Marquez Stevenson, looked in his debut. Jeremy, I'm starting with you. What were your thoughts on the Bills special teams?
I mean, obviously the kick coverage team has been, I think they've been the best kick coverage unit in the NFL for the past 2 years. And I mean, shouts out to Sared Neal and Tyron Jones for continuously holding that unit down. And Andre Smith was back on the field yesterday. I have not seen him since, was it the Tennessee game? I don't know if I've seen him since that game, but it was good to see him back out there being part of a core. And we know how much Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane values the special teams core. They talked about them the moment they got here, and they showed it's legit important to them. As far as Marquez Stevenson, obviously he had a little rookie moment there when he muffed the punt. He did pick it up, and I think he scrambled for like 9 yards. You can see the explosiveness in him. You can definitely see it. He seems more natural than McKenzie back there to me. I'm not a big McKenzie punt return fan. Kick return, I'm kind of okay with. Punt return, I'm not. So I would like to see Stevenson get more touches there. I think he could be very dynamic. But once again, it comes back down to roster spots. Where Stevenson excels at possibly punt returning, we lose another receiver at this stage of his career. Not saying he can't get better, but Isaiah McKenzie can be an effective part of the offense. So once again, we're kind of back to square one with Andre Roberts if we're going to continue with Stevenson, where you're using a roster spot up for a guy who really can't help you on offense. And I really don't like that. I'm not a fan of it. But other than that, I thought the coverage team was great. I thought the return game was okay. It was solid, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting next couple of weeks here to see who's inactive on this team and who's not.
Yeah, it seems like the Bills are definitely making some statements with their weekly inactives and who they choose to activate for the game. Don't they activate 47, or is it up to 49 this year? Did they change it to 49, 47 or 49, whatever it is?
I think you can get an extra offensive lineman, yeah.
Yeah, something along that nature. It has become more and more competitive throughout the weeks as to who the Bills are going to activate for their active game day roster, and I think that's certainly that doesn't come without any as much of a surprise to me, given how they looked against the Colts. There needs to be some amount of accountability in that locker room, and that they have really good leaders in there, so that doesn't come as much of a surprise, and the accountability is a big thing. And using your weekly inactives as a way to do that doesn't come as a surprise to me at all. And I was quite enamored with how Marquez Stevenson looked last night. I agree with you, Jeremy. He looks a little more comfortable back there. He doesn't. Maybe it's because I'm not holding my breath when the punt comes to his hands. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not. It has nothing to do with Marquez Stevenson and everything to do with us holding our breath when Isaiah McKenzie goes to field a punt. Travis, what were your thoughts on the Bills special teams unit and specifically Marquez Stevenson in his debut?
Yeah, well, to touch on McKenzie, I think he fields the punts fine. His situational awareness is what scares me. I don't think he sometimes he doesn't know like that time where he touched the ball and we luckily knocked it out of the end zone or recovered it. Like he got lucky, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't know the rules in that scenario. When he misfielded that kickoff that we against Washington, like he could have been out there thinking he was returning. The rules were the same as a punt, because he didn't really seem like he was trying to catch that ball. I mean, at the very least, run at it, let it bounce off you and go out of bounds. But yeah, with Marquez Stevenson, it's going to all be about progression because, as Jeremy said, I don't care how fast he is. He's only been practiced for 2 days. He's not going to be able to be inserted in this offense. This offense, you need to know what every wide receiver is doing on every play because you might get shifted into motion and end up taking the X's role when you were out at the Z. So he's not going to have it in between the ears yet. I think the more we see him, it's going to be an indication on how well he's progressing during the week. So that'll definitely be something to look forward to. I just want some guy who can sit back there and not give the ball back. That's what that's what I'll settle for. As far as the whole special teams, we all know Taiwan Jones is a fantastic gunner. He's always the first one down there. Him and Saran Neal are elite. But watching him block the gunners, it's a thing of beauty. He's like waltzing with these guys down the field. He doesn't hold, he doesn't pull, but he's always in their way. And this is a guy who is probably the best, I don't know, in the past 10 years to do what he does. And he plays all of it. He's the gunner. He's blocking the gunner. He's going down, returning, or he's blocking for kickoffs, and he's chasing down kicks. He is an excellent example of if you find your niche in this league, you can be so good and so important to a team that people are wondering why you keep them on. You keep 5 running backs active on game day, but he proves that week in and week out, and it's a shame because not a lot of people get in the weeds and watch the gunner or the guy blocking him.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to touch on that, Trevor. Shout out to him for carving out an 11-year career so far. Shout out to him for that because if you remember him, a lot of people probably only remember him from Madden because he had like 97 speed back in the day. But he came out as a running back, then he was moved to cornerback. Then he was moved back to running back. So shout out to him for carving out a career. We've seen guys who get drafted in the first round and can't even carve out 5 years. And this guy is carving out 11, looking like he can go for 13 very easily. So shout out to him, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Taiwan Jones, I think he's one of the more underrated special teams players in the league. No one really ever talks about him. No one ever really talks about Taiwan Jones.
Well, I'm sure in the league, between coaches, he gets the props, but unfortunately, it's for the fans is they don't care about that.
No.
Nobody watches the special
Taiwan
teams.
who? Deactivate. Why we got that guy on the roster? Yeah, okay.
He never touched the ball once.
Right.
Not when they touched the ball and then the Texans beat the Bills. That was the last time I remember Taiwan Jones touching a football. But yeah, it was a fun game. We can't get out of here without giving our weekly game balls. Whenever the Bills win, we give away game balls. Jeremy, who's you getting your game ball this week?
Okay, I really hadn't thought about this, but I'm gonna give my game ball to Matt Breida. And the reason I'm gonna give my game ball to Matt Breida is because he came to Buffalo. He's been a consummate pro. Was inactive? I mean, this is the guy who was played big time in the Super Bowl with San Francisco just a couple years back. About being a pro and staying ready and waiting for your time to come if it comes. And it came and he was ready for it. So my game ball's going to go to Matt Breida for, being ready to go when the coaches ask him and keeping a positive attitude and being a professional.
Yeah, goes a long way. And the Bills offense is a little more electric as a result. Travis, who gets your game ball this week?
My game ball goes to Ed Oliver. There was you can count on 2 hands, maybe need 3 the plays that he really affected, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. He was constantly getting great penetration. He's masterful using his hands. You could tell he feels it. It's something about a guy in a Bills uniform who has that motor aspect to him where he's always giving it 100%. He doesn't take plays off. And yeah, he's going to get those roughing the passers every now and then, but it's not a dirty thing. It's just, I really think he just wants to affect the play every single time he lines up. So to get, maybe a little over 30 snaps, and to constantly, I was watching with my wife, and she's like, this 91 guy, he's in there every play. So my game ball goes to Ed Oliver. Although, his stats are not groundbreaking, he's affecting the play.
Yeah. Ed Oliver is a big time piece of what the Bills defensive line can do. My game ball this week is going to Dawson Knox. And Dawson Knox, whenever Dawson Knox is on the field for the Bills and the Bills are in the red zone, it feels like the Bills have a better chance to score. Dawson Knox has become such a weapon for this offense, such a reliable target for Josh Allen throughout the course of this season that, 7 touchdowns for a tight end. No tight end has ever had more in franchise history for the Bills. So congratulations to Dawson Knox in setting a franchise record for touchdowns by a tight end. But Dawson Knox, he's a player that teams have to account for every week. And he's slowly started to carve out a role, or not necessarily carve out a role for himself, but more so turn himself into one of the more elite tight ends in the NFL. And I think every week he becomes a little closer to that. And by the end of the season, we very well could be saying he's one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Guys, it's been a fun show. It was a good game. It was a fun game. It was a great holiday. I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. I hope everybody enjoyed their time with their family and their friends. Before we get out of here, any parting words, Jeremy?
No, I mean, I'll be on. I think I'll be on live Tuesday, and shout out to all you people out there. And I got my thing for that wanted to talk crap about Dawson Knox, and I'm gonna have me I told you so moment that he was fine, that he would develop, and you know who you are because there was a lot of you who wanted to trade for Zach Ertz. You needed a Travis Kelce to be great. You wanted an Evan Ingram. Well, you know what? Shame on you. Shame on you. This guy's carved up a very good role, and we told you he needed to play games. He didn't have a lot of games in the belt. He did not have a lot of production in the belt because he had DK Metcalf and AJ Brown in college on each side of him. Well, shame on you, Dawson Knox. You're my guy.
That is great.
There you go.
Yeah. That's my guy.
That's it. That's good. All right. Travis, any parting words, man?
To follow up in the words of Michael Scott, well, how the turntables. Everybody loves Dawson Knox now. Mm-hmm. We weren't hearing the praise, I don't know, as little as, I don't know, the summer, mm-hmm. So, I'm with you, man. Shout out. But for me, before we get out of here, we have a slate of good football teams, and unfortunately, we've been beaten up on the bad ones, and we have a victory against Kansas City. But this is really where we're at the crossroads for our season. Can we man up and beat some quality football teams? And we see New England. I mean, we'll put the division to bed between those two games. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And as annoying as it may be, doesn't it feel a little good though that there's we actually have some sort of fight for the division this year? It's each team controls their own destiny by playing each other twice in 4 weeks. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, and let's see what next week brings.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting road ahead for the Bills. 2 times to beat the Patriots. That's going to be fun. It'll be fun for the Bills going the rest of the way. Hopefully, this team has a long time to heal up and get ready for their next game. A long week after playing on Thursday. I guess that's the benefit of having a short week, is you have a long week on the other end of things. But be sure to follow both of these guys where you can find them on Twitter. You can find their Twitter handles in the description below on Facebook and YouTube. You can find my their ats are as it reads. You can find my handle in the description below as well, at CFR Clayton. Be sure to follow the Colefront Report on Instagram and Twitter, at Colefront Report on Twitter, at Colefront Report _Bills News on Instagram. And then be sure to like our Facebook page, Buffalo Bills Colefront Report, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Colefront Report. It's always fun, guys. It's always fun. It's more fun, especially after a Bills win. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and staying tuned in throughout the duration of the show. Have a happy holiday. Have a good weekend, and stay safe, stay healthy, and go Bills.